If you are in 5th, 6th, or 7th grade and you would like to take a little break and not listen to the sermon, please go with Rabbi Bonder. Are you going to the MPR? Yeah. Into the MPR, or you can meet him outside in the lobby in the foyer, and we'll take just a couple of seconds for kids to exit as they so choose, and then I'll begin. Sydney, you have to stay. The date was May 5th, 1955. An accountant lay awake in the middle of the night. He looked out his window, and you know those old banks in 1955 that would flash time and temperature? He looked outside and he said, it's 55 degrees. And then he looked outside a little farther as the clock cycled through, and he realized, it's 5:55 in the morning. So he said, isn't that odd? So he goes downstairs and he decides to go to work in his office place. He's an accountant on 55th and 5th. He goes up to the office on the 55th floor and decides to work on the books of his major client. And he balances the book, $5,555,555.55, both debit and credit. He says, isn't that odd? At the end of the day, at 5:55, he takes the elevator down, grabs a cab, goes to the bank and says, I want to take out all of my money. All of the money is given to him, and guess how much? $5,555.55. He goes downstairs, grabs a cag, and says, take me to Aqueduct. I want to go to the horse track. Today's a lucky day. So he goes up to the teller and says, I want to put everything to win on number 5 in the 5th. So the 5th race comes. He goes down to the track, stands by the rail, watches the horses go into the gate, and they're off. They're running. He's cheering. Number 5 is in the lead. And sure enough, at the end of the race, he raises up his hands because the horse came in 5th. Sometimes things just kind of come together. And spiritually, I feel things are coming together for me. For us. And this is an opportunity for me in a series of sermons that I'm going to deliver as I reflect upon my retirement and leaving this community. As your rabbi, I will not go far, but I will be leaving professionally and turning this congregation over to my friend and colleague who is infinitely capable, Rabbi Jason Bonder. But let me talk for a moment about America and what is happening religiously. America used to be known as a very religious country. There used to be 250,000 churches and synagogues in the United States, but no more. We are seeing a series of synagogue and church closings, mergers, and consolidations. Walk down any great city, walk down the streets of Philadelphia, and you will see numerous former churches turned into either restaurants or condos. Go to Europe, and you'll see the same thing. The great cathedrals of Europe are overflowing with people, but not with worshipers. They're full of tourists who want to climb the towers, see the architecture, but rarely are they praying. Now, in order to enter any of these great cathedrals, you have to pay a pretty steep admission price. And if you didn't know any better, that wouldn't seem odd. But to me, and to anyone in my generation, it is noticeable. Because when I traveled to Europe in the 1970s and 80s, you could get into any great cathedral for free. The churches were supported by their members, so there was no need to charge the tourists. But now, with fewer and fewer members, in order to keep the churches open, they charge extremely high prices to get into the churches. Even staunchly Catholic Italy is seeing a tidal wave away from organized religion. In his new book, The Great Dechurching, Who's Leaving, Why They Are Going, and What Will It Take to Bring Them Back, Jim Davis observes, and I quote, We are currently in the middle of the largest and the fastest growing shift in the history of our country. 15% of American adults living today, approximately 40 million people, have effectively stopped going to services. And most of this de-churching has taken place in the last 25 years. No theological group, age group, ethnicity, political affiliation, education level, location, or income bracket is escaping this great de-churching. And the highest level of dissatisfaction and the walking away is, you guessed it, amongst the Jews. In Jewish mysticism, everything was sacred. Everything is God. Nothing can be devoid of holiness, for God is not in everything. God is everything. But now the pendulum is swinging in the opposite direction. Today, nothing is sacred. God is absent in our world, and our people are walking away. More and more people subscribe to the Rhett Butler school of religion. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. Let's be honest. The reform and conservative movements in Judaism are undergoing a massive shrinking. NIFTY, the National Youth Movement, is all but gone. BAFTI, our local youth group, is defunct, and it has been replaced by BBYO, which is an alternative, secular, non-religious youth movement, disconnected from any shul. Now, I have no problem with BBYO. In fact, I am happy that our kids find a place to be Jewish, but it is telling to me that NIFTY, which was essentially religious, has been replaced in its entirety by BBYO, which is secular. Our kids are expressing themselves with their feet. Young liberal people are not angry. They're not alienated. I think they're disappointed. We have failed to engage them beyond officiating at their children's bar bat mitzvah, officiating at their weddings and life cycle events, or taking care of their children in our wonderful preschool. Abraham Joshua Heschel, the late great rabbi who I studied in seminary, wrote the following about the religious community in the 1950s. Religion has declined not because it was refuted, but because it has become irrelevant, dull, oppressive, insipid. When faith is completely replaced by creed, worship by discipline, love by habit, when the crisis of today is ignored because of the splendor of the past, when faith becomes an heirloom rather than a living fountain, when religion speaks only in the name of authority rather than in the voice of compassion, then religion and its message becomes meaningless. Heschel is reminding us that if people are moving away from Judaism, it is because we, the leaders, have moved away from the core essentials of the faith, and it is because of our own discomfort that we are pushing people away. If we are looking for the cause of the great de-churching in this country, we need look no further than ourselves. As I prepare to step aside for a new generation of leaders, I'd like to focus on what I think we need to do to restructure ourselves as we move forward. And so that you can follow me and you know when we're close to the end, I'd like to speak about 5 issues, some of which we're already doing, but some of which we have to be more intentional. First, we need to have the courage to ask the tough questions and to see our faith as a means to grow. The essence of our faith is not the easy answers we can provide, but the questions we are asking. Anyone who tells you that they have the truth with a capital T, run. Because Judaism is not about finding easy answers and being offered easy platitudes. It's about asking the tough questions. And this is something we share with America, which is also in a crisis of faith. Democracy, like Judaism, is not the solution to our problem. It is the question whether or not we can come together to form a more perfect union. Rabbi Jeff Salkin, a dear friend of mine with whom I traveled to Poland and to visit Ukraine, taught me something a few years ago when we were there. He taught me that America, like Judaism, asks us, can we stretch? Can we go beyond our comfort zone? Our national anthem, he pointed out, does precisely that. The Star-Spangled Banner, he taught me, by Francis Scott Key, proclaims nothing. Our national anthem proclaims nothing. It is rather just a series of questions. Oh, say, can you see, by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming? It concludes with another question. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave? Francis Scott Key is asking us, ask yourself a question. Will democracy prevail? And the second thing Salkin taught me is that everybody cheers at the end of the national anthem. Why? Not because they're patriots, but because to sing the national anthem is one of the most taxing vocal pieces around. You have to go an octave and a half. And if it's done well, everybody cheers. To be an American, to be a Jew, is to stretch ourselves beyond our comfort zone and to try to see the needs of others. It is a call to stretch ourselves spiritually, to go beyond that which is comfortable. Our purpose, and you've heard me say it before, is not just to comfort the afflicted, it is to afflict the comfortable. It is to make us ill at ease with the way things are. We need, as American Reformed Jews, to be a little more courageous. So I want to ask a couple of questions. What are we willing to do to reduce our carbon footprint? Are we willing to pay a little more to drive an electric car and maybe inconvenience ourselves a bit to reduce some greenhouse gases? Are we willing to fly a little less on our next vacation? How welcoming, honestly, should we be to the immigrant who comes to our shores? What will we do? What are we willing to give up to help those who want a better life? What is the fair way to distribute wealth in this country? Are we willing to give up a little, pay a little more taxes, to preserve the middle class, which is rapidly disappearing? And what about the violence and the unlivability of our city just a few miles away? How long will we and can we continue to ignore the plight of the poor, those who have no health insurance and who are getting shot at every day, 5 miles from here? How do we address the issue of racism, anti-Semitism, and homophobia in this country? We need to have a faith that does not placate, but agitates. And second, we need to change something about being a Reformed Jew. We need to celebrate our uniqueness. For too long, we have spoken about how similar we are to everyone else. We try to show our commonality with our religious neighbors. That's the hallmark of Reformed Judaism, and we have drunk from the Kool-Aid of universalism. But if we are so similar, then why be Jewish and subject ourselves to all this anti-Semitism and prejudice? If there's nothing unique about who we are and what we do and how we pray and how we eat, then why endure all the hate to preserve it? We need to have the courage to affirm our uniqueness and our unique spiritual path to emotional health. Get yourself on your iPhone a Jewish calendar. Know the cycle of the year. Know when it's Tu B'Shvat or Simchas Torah. Read the Torah and study it. Light Shabbat candles. It takes 5 minutes. Build a sukkah. That takes longer. Lead or attend a Passover Seder. Don't eat chametz for Passover. Fast on Yom Kippur. There's a story about the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I think it was Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson who came to America from Europe for a tour, and he was given an extensive tour of the Jewish community, its shuls, its homes, its community centers, and he was asked at the conclusion of his visit what he thought of American Judaism. He commented that we are an incredibly spiritual community. We love our faith. We appreciate our heritage. We know how to welcome Shabbat with the blessings. But, he said, we haven't yet learned how to make Havdalah. In other words, we're spiritual, but we haven't figured out how to be spiritually in a uniquely Jewish way. We try too hard to be like others, and we falter if we don't know why and how we can be distinct. Now, this does not mean we have to live separately, only that we have to have the courage and the strength to be among non-Jews, which is the hallmark of the modern life, while thinking Jewishly, and as Rabbi spoke about last night, living Jewishly. The Talmud mentions the ancient Colosseum. The rabbis debate whether or not a Jew can go to the Colosseum. You know what happened there. We all saw Gladiator. People were killed in a brutal blood sport. So the rabbis asked, can you go? One rabbi said no. Just as you cannot consume blood with your mouth, you cannot consume blood with your eyes. And so don't go. It's a place of violence and hate. But as is typical in the Talmud, there was a dissenter, and one rabbi said, you must go. You could be in a crowd when the gladiator is wounded and everyone is yelling to kill him or to save him. And the emperor has the power of life and death. If the emperor wants the gladiator to live, he would hold his thumb up. And if he wanted the gladiator to die, he would hold his thumb down. So the rabbi said, go. You have a job. When everyone is yelling, kill him, yell as loud as you can to save him. Maybe you can turn the thumbs down into a thumbs up. Affirm our uniqueness. Say yes when everybody else is saying no. I am so proud that historically we have done that in the past. We were the first to support the LGBTQ community. We stood in the 1960s with African Americans demanding civil rights. We aligned ourselves with the downtrodden, or as the Bible referred to, the widow, the orphan, the stranger. We cried out when the world was indifferent. Let us maintain that courage to stand apart ritually. Third, we must continue to maintain our link with our land. Sadly, the American reform movement is distancing itself from Israel and thereby, in my opinion, losing its soul and alienating our community. Yes, of course, there is much that Israel is doing to alienate the liberal community from the current government, but we have to become more engaged in Israel, not less. At the recent CCR conference in Israel last year, my colleague, Rabbi Rosie Chaim, lamented that not once during the conference did the rabbis ever stand to sing Hatikva. Not once in their 4-day conference. This is indicative of a breach between liberal Judaism and Israel. If the North American reform movement in word or in deed, by action or by silence, becomes in fact or even in perception anti-Zionist, anti-particularistic, that cares only for and mostly about universal concerns, unanchored in and unmoved by the centrality of the Jewish peoplehood and the state of Israel, most American Jews will abandon us. We need to be wary of turning against Israel to join our ideological opponents and political enemies in castigating Zionism. I love the state of Israel. I love it because it is my homeland. The Christians have hundreds of countries. The Muslims have numerous lands. We Jews have but one. We must proudly proclaim our Zionism and proactively lead by going there and learning, and once we know, defend her from those who wish to destroy her. I will not turn away from Israel, and I ask that this congregation not do so also. I will not pretend that problems don't exist for some false sense of unity, but a Judaism absent Jewish peoplehood and a connection to Israel and the homeland is not Judaism. It is something else. Separation from the land of Israel lasted for almost 2,000 years, but it was never considered permanent in Jewish thought. Even when we were thousands of miles away, next year in Jerusalem, every prayer, Jerusalem, Israel, we never turned our back. Of course, there were times of estrangement, but the bonds for 2,000 years held fast. Are we going to break that now? I believe that change politically can come in Israel like change can come to all countries, like change came here. Don't think that just because there's a government there that we don't like now, that he'll be there in 5 years, in 10 years. We need to double down. I know that's an ugly phrase today, but I'm going to say it anyway. We need to double down on Israel because we are living during miraculous time, and shame on us if we turn away. Fourth, two more. We need to start talking about religion not just as requiring behavior or obedience, but offering a way to keep us happy and healthy. The oughts of Jewish life, you ought to do this, you should do that, need to be replaced with the benefits of doing that. The you have to do this should be replaced with do this for its own sake, because it's good for you. The mitzvah is its own reward. Mitzvah goreret mitzvah. Jewish living has its health rewards. Lisa Miller, in her recent book, The Awakened Brain, observed that those who are spiritually connected are 80% less likely to abuse drugs, 85% less likely to die by suicide. She conducted brain scans of people who were asked to think spiritually and to remember holy moments in their lives, and she observed a noted increase in positive brain activity. In a landmark 2012 study, she demonstrated that spirituality contributes to preventing depression. Participants all at risk for genetic risks of depression were asked about a spiritual moment in their lives or what religion meant to them while they were having an MRI. And scans showed that the highly spiritual brain was thicker in exactly the same region that is weaker and withered in a depressed brain. In other words, come here because it'll keep you healthier and happier and more positive. We need to shift away from obedience to live a Jewish life and to fulfill the covenant because it'll make you happier, more connected, and more resilient. And finally, Beth Or has to be a place, and this has been one of my failures, where we have to take God more seriously. We do ourselves a disservice if we focus primarily on social justice, culture, community, mahjong, and getting together. The name of the divine in our sacred literature is pronounced Adonai, but it is spelled Yud-He-Vav-He, which means that which is, was, and will be. God's name is the summation of time. Now, I, like many of you, struggle with the traditional understandings of God often presented in the Machzor. I've never really resonated with that God. but I do see God as the sum total of that which makes my life meaningful. Love, faith, courage, hope, resilience, connection. Let me make a point by reflecting on God's name. We Jews were never allowed to pronounce God's name. But maybe the truth is we can't, because it's not possible to pronounce the name of God, because it's like the name of the wind, of breath, of very existence. That's God's name. And when we confront it, all we can say is what Abraham said. Hineni, I am here. Maybe the fact that the millennials are leaving us is our fault. Too many of my colleagues point their finger at them and say, come back here because you ought to. I think we need to be pointing the finger at ourselves. Playing off that 1970s cartoon Pogo, we have met the problem, and it is us. I end with a story about two boys who were always getting in trouble. They lied, they stealed. Mother took them to psychologists and psychiatrists and doctors and sociologists. Couldn't get these boys straight. So finally, the mom took the two boys to the rabbi. The rabbi agreed to meet with these two boys, but only if she could meet with the younger one first. The older one had to wait out in the lobby. So the younger one comes in, sits across the rabbi. The rabbi leans in and says, "Where is God?" Little boy says, I don't know. She says, "I'm going to ask you again. Where is God?" He fidgets a little more. He says, I don't know. Where is God? Boy panics. He runs outside, finds his brother in the lobby, and says, "We're in big trouble." "Why?" says the older brother. "We're in big trouble, I'm telling you." "Why?" "Because God is missing and they think we did it." If God is missing, then we did it. If faith is missing, then we destroyed it. If community is disintegrating, then we have torn it apart. If we are moving away from Israel, that's on us. And if people are leaving, then we need to understand what we need to do to get it right to bring them back. We have an opportunity. You are at an inflection point to make this a congregation where we can continue to be more vibrantly believing, belonging, and committed to becoming, not for our children, but for us. Not for some glorification of the past, but because we believe in the future. Not to assuage our guilt, but to bring us some peace. Not just for community, but for love and for faith. Not because we have to, but because deep down inside, in the very bones of our body, we need to and want to. And when we exemplify that commitment, we might just turn this thing around. I have a homework assignment for you. I ask you to do this. Go out and find a millennial who is working today. Go out and find someone who says, Rosh Hashanah, Fet, and be a missionary. Tell them why they can come here. Fight the great dechurching of our age so that they can and we can be the best we can be, and thus be true to ourselves, our heritage, our homeland, our faith. Good Yontif.